بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Brothers and sisters, welcome to this short series of lectures on basic Sarf. So the word Sarf is used to name one of the categories of knowledge of the Arabic language, and is commonly translated in English as morphology or word morphology. For example, if you have a root word like kataba, to write, how can you derivate another word from this root word? How can you make, for example, a writer, katibun? We see that there are letters in common, there are harakat, vowels if you want, in common, but there are also some changes. So what are the rules in order to make those changes that will enable us to go from a root word to another word? Likewise, if you have a complicated word, like for example, اضطرب, how can you find the root words, the letters within that complicated word in order to go back to the root and be able to find that root in the dictionary and look up the meaning and then understand later on the meaning of that complicated word that you're dealing with. So that is really the benefit of the knowledge of Sarf. If you understand Sarf properly, your scope of vocabulary will increase tremendously over no time. Because if you understand how to use the basic word and how to derivate different awzan from it throughout different uses, well, out of one word, all of a sudden, you have all these meanings here that open up to you. So in order to teach this class, I'm going to be using this document, and you shall be able to find it in the description of this video, inshallah ta'ala. I shall put a link for you to be able to download it. You're going to need some patience to follow this class because it might be a bit dry. It's not a very buzzy subject. However, if you want to learn your religion, if you want to gain a certain stability, a certain clarity, you need to have patience upon some dry lessons. You can't expect to just follow buzzy videos on YouTube and this be something extraordinarily enlightening to you. Yes, there are some buzzy videos that are enlightening. However, in order to get a real solid foundation of your deen, there is some knowledge that you need in order to get a solid understanding of certain principles that will be really useful to you theoretically and practically throughout your life. So this table right here is going to be my basic table for explaining what I want you to understand in this series. Sarf is very well explained in Medina book 3 and 4. For those who have the version that is split into two books, I have a version that's only Medina book 3, and some of it, and some have versions where it's 3 and 4. So Sarf is very well explained in there. However, many people haven't reached there and have or already have a level to start reading books on their own, but they are struggling with the vocabulary. So this lesson is really aimed at these people that have not reached it book 3, or that have reached the level to start book 3 but don't have a teacher, or haven't really found online classes that are really appealing to them. Whatever reason it is, this right here is for you. I believe that the selection that I have taken for you here is what you will be using the most. It is not a full explanation of Sarf. As I have said, it's basic Sarf. I'm not giving you the full scope. However, I'm giving you what I believe will enable you to face the overwhelming majority of cases that you will come across in your life, really. There will be just things here and there that will be difficult, different, except for, of course, anything that is to do with huruf illa. And I'm not going to touch upon that. But however, with this, you will still be able to make sense of any words that have huruf illa. And I shall explain that later on. So let's get into this table. First of all, let's look at this column right here. We have this word wazn. It's commonly translated in English as scale. That's literally what the word wazn means. So commonly in English we say, what's the scale of the word? Is it fa'ala? Is it af'ala? Is it fa'ala? So understand what is meant here. It's really the pattern, the basic pattern of the verb. Which one is it? We have these basic patterns right here that we will explore. So that's for wazn. Then the wazn is going to be usually expressed in the fi'l madi form. As we know, the af'al, the verbs, there are three types: madi, mudari', and amr. So the wazn is usually going to be explained in the madi. So you see that this column right here and this one right here are the same. Then further along we have the masdar. The masdar is what we would translate in English as the gerund. It is the name to describe the action. For example, the cooking. Cooking here is a noun, it's not a verb. For example, I like cooking, or I like swimming. Swimming is difficult. Swimming is fun. So swimming in this sentence right here is the subject. It's a noun, it's not a verb. So that is the closest you can come to understand the meaning of masdar in Arabic. Like to just take the examples I just gave you. Cooking, الطبخ. Right? أنا أحب الطبخ. I like cooking. I enjoy cooking. Swimming, السباحة. It's a ism. It's not a fi'l. سبح يسبح اسبح السباحة. It's a ism, not a fi'l. Then you have the fa'il, which is also a noun, and the maf'ul, which is also a noun. So here we have af'al, as you can see here in the title, and here we have asma. So the fa'il is the one doing the action. To go back to our example, cooking, we have the cook. So, for example, in Arabic, we're going to have the fi'l kataba. We have al-katibu, the writer. Kataba, writing. Al-katibu, the writer. Or the thing that is written. Al-maktub, which is also a ism. So this is an example of how the first wazn gets, if you want, conjugated along this first line. Then from this original wazn, we're going to go, okay, first of all, let me say, most of the af'al, the verbs in Arabic, are originally thulathi, which means that they are originally made up of three letters. The first letter, we refer to it saying it's the fa'ul fi'l. The first letter is called the fa. The second letter is called the ayn. I can't select it right now. And the third one is called the lam, lamul fi'l. If we say lamul fi'l, we mean the third letter, the last letter of the fi'l, if it's a thulathi. Then from this thulathi, we are going to derivate what is called thulathi mazid, a verb that is made up of three letters with additional letters. So first of all, here we have thulathi, three letters, mazid, بحرف. We add one letter to the 3 original letters. So we have, from فعل, we get أفعل. So we have this Hamza, alif with Hamza and a fatha that comes before the fa, and the fa becomes sakin. Before it had a fatha, now it has a sukun. And the ayn and the lam obligatory have fatha, as we shall see. Now this particular wasn't right here. When we do this to the original verb, we are changing the meaning of this original verb. So in this column right here, you have the meanings of these awzan, these scales. So af'ala, what's the meaning of af'ala? What changes when I go from fa'ala to af'ala? What we call a ta'diya or a ta'addi. What does that mean? The word ta'diya or ta'addi, you have it here in the explanation, is to take the action of the verb from the subject onto an object, or from the first object to a second object. Let me give you an example. So first of all, take an action from the verb, from the subject to the object. Let's take the verb jalasa, to sit down or to sit. So I will say jalastu, I sat down. That is the thulathi, jalastu. Now I'm going to say from jalasa, I'm going to say ajlasa. So the verb jalasa, it's an action that is done by me and kind of to myself. I'm not doing the action to anything or anybody else. But if I say ajlasa, the action is not happening to me. It's happening by me, but onto somebody else. For example, I will say ajlastu al-dayfa fil ghurfa. I made the guest sit down in the room. So from sitting down myself, it becomes I make somebody else sit down. So that's the meaning of ta'addi, from the subject onto an object. But what if I already have an object in my sentence? Like, for example, alimtu al-mas'alata. I know, or a'lamu, let's say, make it easier, a'lamu al-mas'ala. I know this topic, this question. So the knowledge is from me, but there is an object. My knowledge is onto something. It's on this topic, right? Alimtu al-mas'ala or as-su'al. I know this question. Now I'm going to make it from me knowing something to me making the knowledge of this thing on somebody else. For example, a'lamtu Zaydan al-mas'ala. So I went from alimtu or a'lamu to a'lamtu. I informed Zayd of this question or of this topic. So we see that from first me knowing something, now I am making somebody else know something. Likewise, the next scale, fa'ala. Fa'ala. So here we have added one letter. We added a second ayn to the fi'l, which means we made it a shadda. A shadda means doubling a letter. So the central letter from the fi'l has been doubled. So this can have two meanings. It can have either a ta'diya, likewise, alimtu al-mas'ala or allamtu al-mas'ala. I have taught the mas'ala to somebody. Or a takthir. A takthir means something making it numerous, making some exaggeration with it. Like for example in Surah Yusuf, وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابِ. She closed the door in some kind of like, she properly closed these doors. Like all the doors were closed and locked and there is just no way that, she left any anything open anywhere. Next wazn is fa'ala. Here we have added an alif mad, not a hamza. Here we have added a hamza. Here we add an alif mad after the fa'ul fi'l. The fa'ul fi'l being the first letter of the fi'l. So this means al-musharaka. Al-musharaka means getting another party involved, sharing something with somebody or engaging somebody with an action. Like, for example, we can have the fi'l ذكر. ذكرت المسألة. I mentioned this question or this topic. Or I can say ذاكرت فلانا أو زيدا المسألة. Here I am mentioning this mas'ala to Zayd in order to engage him in a conversation or in a revision. It's usually going to, ذاكر is usually going to be used in the sense of revising with somebody else, revising some kind of knowledge study, whatever. ذاكرت فلانا فذاكرني. I mentioned things to him in order to revise with him, and he's mentioning things to me, us revising together. So those are the ثلاثي مزيد بحرف. Now we're going over to the ثلاثي مزيد بحرفين. Here we're adding 2 letters to the original 3 letters. So the first one is افتعل. افتعل. We have the hamzatul wasl at the before the first letter and the ta between the first and the second letter. So this means al-mutawa'a. What's the meaning of al-mutawa'a? Is technically speaking in English making the verb reflexive, i.e. an action that falls onto a subject. It's making the action fall onto the subject himself. For example, as I have said previously, the verb اضطرب. The original meaning is ضرب. ضرب means to hit or to beat, or to hit or to beat. اضطرب. Now it's not that I'm beating myself, but it's that I am becoming inconsistent, inaccurate, confused, contradicting my own self. So 1 minute I'm saying left, the next minute I'm saying right, 1 minute I'm saying white, next minute I'm saying black. I'm just my attitude or my speech, it's like it's clashing with its own self. So we see that the action of beating now, it kind of happens within myself. That's a meaning of al-mutawa'a. The action happens onto the subject himself. Another example of mutawa'a is from this wazn here, in fa'ala. So we have an addition of hamza and noon at the beginning. So again, this is a meaning of mutawa'a. An example is kasartu al-kuba or al-ka'sa. I broke the glass, the cup. Or I can say سقط الكأس وانكسر. The glass fell and it broke. So here I'm not saying that somebody made the action of breaking it. No, it's the glass itself broke. So we see that the action is on the subject himself, which is the glass in that case. انكسر الكأس. الكأس is فاعل. But the action is, it's like happening onto himself. Inshallah ta'ala, clear. Then we have تفاعل, adding a ta before the fa and an alif mad between the fa and the ayn. So this is again al-musharaka. Al-musharaka. So تفاعل, like for example تضارب. We have the action, the fi'l ضرب, to hit or to fight or to beat. تضارب زيد وعمر. It means that Zayd and Amr, they were beating each other up. So you see that here it's like we're involving different parties into the action. Next one is at-takalluf. Now, takalluf, it means to take something onto yourself. For example, we have the verb alima, to know something. If we apply it to this wasn't right here, it will become ta'allama. So ta'allama, we will literally translate in English as studying something, to learn something. So looking at it from this perspective here, takalluf, it means that you are taking the knowledge onto yourself. It's kind of like a process that involves some difficulty. You're engaging into that process, into this kind of difficulty in order to take something onto yourself, which is in this case knowledge. You're learning, meaning you're taking knowledge onto yourself. Last one from these selected awzan is istaf'ala, which has the meaning of talab, which is making a request. So here we have 3 letters coming before the first letter of the fi'l, and this wazn means the request. Famous example or well-known example is istaghfara, making istighfar, saying astaghfirullah. Ghafara, it means to forgive. Allah is al-ghafir and al-ghaffar, He's the one who's forgiving, and us slaves, we are making istighfar. We are istaghfara. That's our action. So that is requesting forgiveness. So now, please understand that these matters here are not absolute rules. These are matters that the scholars of the Arabic language have deducted by looking at the Arabic language from a broad perspective, and they found that on the whole, we can say that in most cases, these awzan will have these meanings. However, in many cases, this does not apply. We shall see in the examples that I have selected where some of these awzan have different meanings, and there is no real rule to know these other meanings other than looking them up. However, you will see that once you start working with this, you will obviously struggle somewhat in the beginning, but very quickly it will become second nature, inshallah ta'ala, and you will see that while reading a text in Arabic or listening to a class, you will understand far more than what you used to by just being familiar with how this works. So in the next class, we are going to look at how these awzan get conjugated, if we can call it this way. And in further classes, we shall look at different examples that I have selected for you to illustrate the derivation, the meaning, as well as the conjugation. So again, please have patience. Inshallah ta'ala, you will find this beneficial. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.